Hello again. SADC member states are uniting in their call for the removal of sanctions on Zimbabwe. Various activities are being held on different platforms to highlight the plight of Zimbabweans. Both the United States and EU have imposed sanctions on the country over its failure to fix democratic and human rights abuses. My colleague Pindai Dube joins us from Harare for more on this. So it's important to note that these are targeted sanctions at individuals and certain companies, Pindai, but just for context's sake, remind us as to why it is that these sanctions were imposed in the first place.
Yes, thank you, Dudu. If you remember very well, Dudu, in the early 2000s, there was land grab, arrest of opposition activists, displacement of white farmers, killing of white farmers, and also general violation of the human rights during Mugabe regime. So after that, those days, I think around 2002, there was also election rigging, and after that, there was imposition of targeted sanctions against leaders, official, top government officials, and companies which are aligned to the ruling ZANU-PF by the United States and also by the European Union.
What do they need to do to have these sanctions lifted? They have claimed time and time again that these sanctions against them are impacting the country as a whole.
Yes, as I mentioned, the issue of human rights violation, especially misgovernance, corruption, and other related violation of human rights in Zimbabwe. This is the demand which is being put on table by the United States and also by the EU. They are saying until this is met, there is no lifting of these sanctions. In the past week, we had the United States Ambassador Brian Nichols saying that this is just a hollow exercise. The demand for the sanctions to be lifted. He also mentioned that and corruption and other misgovernance are the main issue which make these sanctions not to be lifted.
We go back to a period in 1965 where the United Nations imposed sanctions on the country. Ian Smith's government at the time, as flawed as it was, managed to keep the country afloat with what it called sanctions-busting methods. So one wonders what the current government is actually doing about this.
Yes, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Zimbabwe Moyo, in the past months has been talking about engaging these countries to lift the sanctions. And also, as you mentioned, they've invited SADC and AU to help them to denounce these sanctions. So, like last night, we saw the musical galas in Bulawayo, and also I understand today around the country in areas like Lupane, Murewa, there are protests, marches around the country denouncing these sanctions. But the EU and the United States are insisting that until there are reforms, political reforms in Zimbabwe. As you remember, in the past months we had the Zimbabwe Lives Matter, where human rights activists and also opposition activists have been mentioning that there is crisis in Zimbabwe. But ZANU-PF and its leader, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, they are insisting that there is no crisis in Zimbabwe. So until this is done, I don't see the sanctions being lifted by the United States and the EU.
The landlocked country was once known as the breadbasket of Africa, providing other parts with essentials. When we talk about the severity of the situation in the country, talk to us about factories that have been shut down. We know there's a number of them also in Bulawayo that once thrived that have been shut down. Is it impossible for the country to reindustrialize?
Yeah, like I mentioned, at the moment, Zimbabwe is in crisis. Actually, there is a high unemployment, and there's also shortage of most basic commodities. There's shortage of cash and water, clean water, and also the WFP, the World Food Program, recently said about 8.6 million Zimbabweans are facing hunger due to drought and economic meltdown. So until there is stop of human rights violation and lifting of sanction, I believe that's how Zimbabwe's economy will come back to its feet.
Pindai Dube out in Harare in Zimbabwe for us. Thank you.